So if you are on a journey to stop smoking and it's been one day, celebrate that one day. It is impressive, it is powerful, it's incredible. I am here for you, I am rooting for you, I'm celebrating you. Hey y'all, it's Chimney. I'm back to talk about marijuana. I also literally just finished watching the original video I made, which I think it's been about a year and a half or so. And I'm like, dang, that's a long video. I was like, girl really talking. She really got a lot to say about this. Goodness. Impressive. So I made a quick poll. I had a couple people already asking in my comment section, like, hey girl, let's get that update. And I have done a couple of like more reflective updates, not as in depth, but I also made a post, and I'm like, my laptop's right here, so I'm just gonna pull it up. I also made a post where I asked y'all if you had any questions. And then yeah, I'm just gonna share, it's been a year and a half, how I'm feeling about that sweet marijuana and my relationship to it. Hopeful Tribe asked me what I found myself doing during the moments when I used to smoke weed. If you've seen that first video, you know that it got to the point where I was smoking as a lifestyle, which I'm like, dang. I used to live a different life, because I'm like, oh, I was smoking. It was like, let's smoke every day. There were times when it would be like, oh, I'm about to go watch the new Cats movie. Insane. Let me take this edible so I can really enjoy it as it's supposed to be enjoyed. Or I just got a bunch of snacks and I'm gonna marathon. It would usually be like media, like I'm gonna marathon this show or whatever. Let me get high and really enjoy it. Sometimes it'd be nature stuff, like, oh, I'm gonna be out in nature. Let me amp up this experience by smoking weed. So that would normally be the way I would approach it if it was intentional. But back then it was at a point where it wasn't even intentional. It was just like what I was doing all the time. Someone else asked me about the alpha wave stuff, and one thing I realized about my YouTube channel and my life in general is I'll learn something, absorb it, be very excited about it, talk about it, and then it either becomes a part of my life or it fades away and I never think or talk about it again. So as it relates to alpha brainwaves and the way that weed affects your ability to generate your own, I have given it no additional thought. I have nothing more to add. The brainwave that's the sexiest wave to me is the theta wave, the delta theta waves. I don't know if delta is real, I think it is, which come with like super deep levels of meditation, and then those can lead to like spontaneous healings and stuff. So those are the current sexiest brainwaves for me, but I'm truly not a scientist. In case you didn't know. And I really admire the way young Chimney was like, let me tell you about this thing I just heard on a podcast that I have done no additional research on. This person also wanted to know, your name is existing, question mark, which is like, ugh. You're like, am I existing? And I'm like, ooh, baby, let me give you a hug. You also wanted to know about my experience in terms of casually having a sesh, whether at an event where I was offered or feeling open, or even an occasion that you embraced, how I felt, was there regret, anything like that. So, in terms of smoking, I've smoked maybe 4 or 5 times since making that video. As far as I can remember, so about in a year and a half, smoked about 4 or 5 times. The 2 times I remember most recently, one was when I left New York. For a while, for like 6 months, I lived in New York. So much fun. I lived in Brooklyn. What was really interesting is, and I actually would love to hear you all reflect on your experience with place-based smoking, because I reflected on how LA has a really strong weed culture, so it was very easy to be high and get high, and that was normal and welcomed. In New York, I definitely did smell weed often, and I think it had more recently become legalized or whatever. But importantly, I had a couple of roommates, none of them smoked, and in my community, like, I was still building my friend groups and stuff, and they didn't really smoke either. So those 6 months that I was there in New York, it was easy to not smoke because no one really smoked. It wasn't that I was being constantly tempted by it. And a lot of the people in the comment section of that first video really reflected how everyone in their friend group was constantly high. So to be the one person not smoking weed was just really, really uncomfortable. And one thing I realized as I've been going on my journey is that my vision for myself when I made that first video is that I wouldn't have any weed in the house and I wouldn't smoke, but I would have this really active social life. And when I would be going out, I would be going to parties and be at places where there was just weed, and I would be invited and I would smoke some. And that hasn't been my experience at all. In part because my social life isn't where my hopes and dreams would have them be, which is fine, God's plan. But also when I do go out, the people that I spend time with don't smoke. Like, they live different lives. They live like healthy, like spiritual, God-fearing lives. And I'm like, hey, is there any weed? And they're like, no. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, I guess I will continue to not smoke. I didn't also go out so much in New York. So it was only like the last week, literally, like we were packing up our stuff and we went out to this one spot and like someone there had some weed and I smoked some once, you know? And it was a fun night. It was cool, but it wasn't like a big deal either way. It was interesting noticing that shift in perception in terms of the depth of conversation. I think that's something that like is often joked about, you know, where you're like, oh, that's so deep, like when people say certain things. But I think what I did notice was like, because I already like to have pretty deep conversations, to talk to someone who was also high meant we could just get into it and we would really just be communicating about something that was like really profound. But you know, we were also high. So like, was that true? Who can say? That was the last time I smoked, and that was like over 6 months ago, because it's like April now. But I've also had THC in my system one time, and that was when I was actually in Mexico. I was hanging out with someone who had the tincture stuff where you just put a little drop on your tongue. It was like a small, kind of more intimate gathering, like 6 or so of us, and we were just kind of like hanging out. And it was interesting noticing how already by that point I was like a year into this trauma healing program I'm in, which was the inspiration for me to do a hard cold turkey stop on smoking in the first place. So already I was more in my body. I was more sensitive to the way people show up in their trauma and the way it's kind of always evident on people's, you know, people are always telling you that they're traumatized. It's just if you want to listen or not. And I felt more attuned to how to be receptive and encouraging of an environment that would allow people to really share. And I did feel a sort of like fun mellowness. What I'm so grateful for, I think the biggest thing I'm grateful for since not having weed as a part of my life. One, and this is interesting, I noticed it, I was like, oh, you really spent 20 minutes talking about weed. The amount of mental energy that goes towards smoking and thinking about weed and getting it, and I'm high right now and blah, 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 that is just gone because it's just not a part of my life anymore. I had the same thing happen when I shaved my head. I'm on a different hair journey now. Back when I was a loose natural. Loose natural sounds like you a hoe. Back when I was a loose natural, walking the streets, I would spend a lot of time thinking about my hair, thinking about hairstyles, deconditioning, detangling, all of these things. Like, it took a lot of mental energy. And the same back then was true for weed. You know, I was just thinking about it every day, and that just isn't, like, I just don't think about it so much anymore because it's not a part of my life. But very importantly, I do still think about it sometimes. And in that other video, I reflected on how I would use it as a guidepost. It's interesting because before it was about you're taking something very seriously, like you're very zeroed in on something and you're blowing something out of proportion. And as I've continued on my healing journey, what I've found is that I used to have this tendency, I'm using the past tense because we healed that, but I used to have this tendency where I would essentially override my nervous system. I would override my fear. I would override my anxiety. And that's what I used to do materially and physically with weed. Like, I'd be like, okay, I'm going to this party with a bunch of strangers. I don't know anyone there. I'm in a new city. I'm all alone and I'm scared, but I have to make friends. I need a community. So even though I'm scared out of my mind and I'm lonely and sad, what I'm gonna do instead, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna smoke some weed, and then I can depress all of those feelings and still go out into the world and make connections and make community because I need it and I will die without it. So I used to have, I'm really trying to make it a past tense thing. I used to have this thing, y'all, where I would really go in with both feet. Whenever I made any decision in my life, I would go all the way in, you know, no matter how scared I was, no matter how overwhelmed I was, I would just go for it all the way because I wasn't connected to my body and I learned to override my nervous system. And that's what allowed my ancestors to survive. This was an intelligent, wise thing. It helped me get to where I am today, right? And what I noticed is that when I would have the urge to smoke, it would be because I was overriding my nervous system and I was overriding the part of me that was saying, this is too much. All this healing, all this meditating, all this stuff, watching all these videos, doing all this, like, you are doing too much. I cannot handle it. I'm overwhelmed. I'm like really buckling under the weight of the pressure you're putting on me. This is young Chimby speaking. I'm really buckling under the weight that you're putting on me to like heal all of my trauma in 24 hours. Can we chill? And I'd be ignoring that voice and I'd be like, be quiet, we're healing everything right now. And so then that part of me would be like, can we get high so that we don't have to feel and experience this huge ocean of sadness and fear that you're asking me to feel right now? And it took me a while to realize that that's what was happening. I am honestly still learning to chill in terms of my healing journey. It feels existential. It feels like it's the most important thing. It feels like it's like life or death to heal trauma. And so to be like, actually maybe take it one step at a time, it's been really hard for me to really appreciate that. As a result, I've noticed like, oh, wanting to smoke is maybe a sign that I need to chill. That's like a common sense thing. Like if you think about what smoking does for you, because also smoking has different effects on people. Some people, and they smoke different things, right? So some people smoke the kind of weed that brings them a lot of energy in life, and others the kind that like calms them down and brings them down. And that's also a question you can ask yourself is like, ooh, I'm having this urge to smoke. Just ask yourself like, what is it that you want from it? Like you're gonna smoke and then what? Smoking is an activity and then you do something. Then you're still in your life. You're still in your room or on the street or you're watching a movie or you're going somewhere, but like you're still doing that thing. So what is it that you think will be different as a result of smoking? And that can give you some insight into the thing that you can presence or be with or process if you have the emotional, capacity and support to really be with the things that are coming up for you. One thing I really wanted to reflect on is the experience I had that got me to start smoking. And I'd be really curious in the comments for you to share like what that first experience was like for you. Because I was raised to think smoking was bad, and I'm like a good person. I don't know why I put it in quotes, but you know why. I'm a good person. And so I was like, I'm a good person. So if smoking is bad, I'm not gonna do it. But I also considered myself to be a very smart person who is thoughtful and influenced by facts and logic and all of these things too. So what got me to smoke is I was in college and I was having a conversation with someone and I was telling them, I was just kind of parroting the ideas I'd heard, which is that smoking is bad. And he was like, why do you say that? And basically I went through every sort of factor and belief system and he kind of point by point refuted it. And one of the things that I said was that it was bad for your health. And I think he said something to the lines of like, actually it's not, and I'm sure he had some kind of facts or figures to back that up. And I think this is why something Thomas Hübl talks a lot about is the way that our minds and our hearts and emotions have been like separated. And so our mind is like hovering like a helicopter over the earth versus being connected to our body. Because if you just think, I feel really dumb like looking back at it. If you just think about it, like, do you think smoking something? Do you think inhaling smoke every day, multiple times a day is good for your body? It's very obviously not. But I really let that man convince me. Listen, if you smoke, do your thing, truly live your best life. And I am not a doctor or a scientist. So like, I'm not gonna debate with you in the comments about the health effects of weed, but just on a basic like level. It's so obviously bad for you. It's so obviously bad for you. And I was just like, I don't think so. This random guy in college told me that it's fine and I'm not gonna do any independent research. So I think I'm good. I think it really speaks to the point that like, listen, you are gonna do whatever you are going to do, So you are either watching this video because you know you don't want to smoke weed anymore and you're looking to be like, okay, homegirl over here, stop smoking. Let's see what's going on with her. Or you want to keep smoking, but you're like, let me see what the other side has to say. Let me just see. Because I have people in my comments who are like, I love weed and I'm gonna keep smoking it. And I'm like, cool. I love that for you. Like, this is your journey, you know? But it's just really interesting how when I look back, I wanted to get high, and so I found a situation that allowed me to get high. And then I stopped wanting to get high, and so I found a situation that made us that it wasn't in my best interest to get high anymore. And the same is true for you. You know exactly what you want to do, and you're gonna do exactly what you want to do. And I love that for you, and I love that for me, and I love that for us. But also, I don't think smoking is good for you. I don't think it's good for you. And what's interesting is that before weed was like widespread and legal and stuff in America, it was really hard to do research on the effects of smoking weed because it was so hard to get it, because it was like a Schedule C, like as bad as heroin kind of drug. So even if you just wanted to do research on it, you couldn't. Now, unfortunately, it feels as if like the population of America has now become like the research subjects. And now we're seeing, oh, here are the negative long-term effects of doing all of these drugs, you know, and doing them for a long period of time. And I think one of the things that really made weed so popular was this idea that like, no, it's good for you. Like, it doesn't harm you. It does not harm you like smoking cigarettes does. It's totally fine. Like, it's super harmless, all these things. And then now people are seeing like in the population itself, like, oh, actually consistent use over long periods of time can have all these really negative side effects. Now, like I said, and I'm gonna say it again, not a doctor, not a scientist, all right? Do your own research, and you're gonna do whatever you wanna do. So in the same way people smoke cigarettes all the time, they know the deal. The final thing I want to say as an update to smoking weed is that, you know, people will share in the comments how it's been like one day that they're weed free, or 1 week, or a few months. I really want to encourage you to celebrate every single day that you are doing this thing that's new, especially if it's involving breaking a habit. I remember I used to talk to this guy who smoked every day. This was years and years and years ago. I judged him for it. And he had like one day where he didn't smoke, and he like called me about it, excited. And I was very much like, okay, and that's one day. Like, I was like, that's not a big deal. But now I understand, like, that is a big deal, and it's worth celebrating. So if you are on a journey to stop smoking and it's been one day, celebrate that one day, because we are taking life one step at a time. It is impressive, it is powerful, it's incredible. I am here for you, I'm rooting for you, I'm celebrating you. So if you want to share in the comments your wins and like where you are in your journey, I am here to celebrate you. It's a big deal to have the courage to say, I'm gonna try to do something new, I'm gonna try to be someone different, be this better version of myself, be this version of myself who's more aligned to who I truly am. I support it. I am proud of you. I am here for you. Good job. Congratulations. It's interesting because at the end of the last video, I talked about how I was making the video before my birthday, and I thought maybe I would still get high, and I was kind of joking that like I still would be down to like go to a party and get high. While I don't have that same urge, like it's not so strong in me to do it in that same way. It's not like a yes anymore. Like if I'm leaning, I'm not like leaning towards yes, like, oh yeah, I want to do this. I think it's much more neutral. But it isn't a no. It isn't like if someone's like, you want some weed, I'll be like, no, get that away. Get that away from me. But I think what's different is that it wouldn't be an automatic yes. It wouldn't be like, oh yeah, for sure. It would be like, I think I would actually think about it. And I think that might be the biggest difference, is that it would become a true choice. It wouldn't become an automatic habit. It wouldn't become a compulsion. It wouldn't be like, yes, finally, I was waiting for someone to ask and to invite me, and I'm looking and I'm going to the parties hoping it's gonna be there. Now it's more like, do I wanna get high right now? And I was walking around like the downtown of my area, and they have like smoke shops and things like that. And I thought like, I mean, here it is, Chimdi, do you wanna buy some? And I was like, no, I think I'm okay. You know, like I think I'm all right. In my life, it's important that there is choice and there is genuine freedom. And if you live a life where it's not an option, yes or no, if you want to do something, you are compelled, you're made to feel like you have to, then you don't have true freedom. And that's not fair, because you deserve true freedom. And so I feel most grateful that I'm able to now live a life where there is more true, genuine freedom, because it's not that I have to do anything and I'm not compelled to do it. I spoke a lot about that being my motivation to stop smoking smoking in the first place is because I saw the way weed had this hold on me, and I didn't like that. And reflecting back on the definite trauma response of hyper independence and hyper self-sufficiency, I see that wanting to live a life without having needs was definitely rooted in trauma, was definitely rooted in a lot of fear and sadness around having needs and wanting things and having it not be met. And so thinking, okay, let me try to figure out how to navigate through life so that I don't want or need anything. And we just became another place to sort of act out that trauma response or coping mechanism or whatever. And now I see like, no, I do have needs, emotional needs, spiritual needs, physical needs. Also, do not email me to hit on me. Someone did that. I'm sure you're very attractive, because most of my subscribers and viewers are. Love that for me. But do not only email me for business. The only way we are getting into a romantic situation is if I'm walking down the street and we start talking. Nothing is happening. I've learned this. Nothing is happening through the DMs. Nothing is happening through the emails. And I realize I'm sending mixed signals because I literally just put out a video where I was like, if you're hot, DM me. I strike that. Stricken from the record. Leave me alone. I don't know how we got there. Let me know in the comments. What has changed for you in the 1.5 years since I made that first video? Are you still smoking? Are you happy about it, or are you sad about it? How expensive is it for you? That came up a lot. People were like, I can't afford this. And I'm like, I get it. Do you think it's an addiction, or do you think it's just a habit? Can you stop at any time? Somebody left a comment that was like, I smoke every single day, but I could stop if I wanted to. I just don't want to, so I smoke every day. Somebody was like, that means it's not. That means it's not. That means it's not a choice, baby. In that last video, I say like, if your job is making you smoke, maybe quit that job. And the person was like, oh, I'm literally in the car before my job, watching this video, getting high as you talk. And I'm just like, But it's hard. Give yourself grace no matter where you are. And if you like this video, thumbs it up, subscribe, join me on my coaching Instagram, Coaching by Chimdi. I'm a creative coach. And my newsletter is back. Click the link below if you want to join my newsletter. It'll be weekly. Okay.